Now, a lot of you have been thinking, oh, well, why hasn't Engelbert released a video like the Phalanx video? Well, it's because there's not really a lot of topics that I can do that are like the Phalanx. Which is why I am going to do several podcast-like videos that you can just listen to anytime about Napoleonic formations and tactics, and then eventually I'll get into a few Napoleonic battles and campaigns, like the Italian campaign, Waterloo, Trafalgar, that kind of thing. So I thought I'd begin today with an introduction to the square formation. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's where they get into a circle, isn't it? And you're right, it's where Napoleonic armies would sit down in a big circle and they would have show and tell. No, what the square formation was it was an anti-cavalry device. That was its primary function. And I will be getting into how it was an anti-cavalry device shortly, but right now I am going to just describe a square formation. So what would happen is troops would be marching in a line. So just imagine a line of troops, maybe 400 men long and 2 deep. So that's 2 lines of 200 men. And what they would do is they would sort of collapse in around a point. So generally an officer would be in the middle or on the edge, so he would be the center of that collapse. So he would say, right, everyone get into 2 lines that are sort of perpendicular to each other. Then those 2 lines would split into 2 other lines, and boom, you have a square. So that's how they would form, at least that's how they would theoretically form, but that's not how they would always form in practice. Now, I said that I was going to discuss how a square is good against cavalry. Now, one of the defining features of cavalry during the Napoleonic era, and about a couple centuries before, and up until the modern day, is that they're terrible when it comes to charging from the front. Now, this has actually been true in almost any time period. The Romans, in the Roman period, cavalry wouldn't charge at the front of a formation because they would see men with things that look sharp, swords or spears or whatever, and say, ooh, no, not going there, and either stop or possibly the horse would run away after throwing its rider. So no, you don't want to be charging from the front when it comes to cavalry. Now, there are 2 other sides to a formation, the flanks and the rear, and these are good because if you've got a bunch of cavalry and you're charging from the flank, then you can sort of envelop a part of their line, which, now, ancient formations and Napoleonic formations and everything in between would generally have a lot of lines involved, because that was a good way of doing a battle, you know. So your men are less likely to run away. It's just better, really. Anyway, the flanks and the rear are a good place to charge, because first of all, the horses don't see men facing towards them. They just see, oh, it's a lot of people. Oh, I don't mind running into them. Also, I'm being spurred on by the person sitting on the horse. But anyway, yeah, so that would work. And the rear is the same, because they can't see the people from the front or their weapons. So, yeah, that's why you would attack the sides and the rear. But in a square, every side is the front. And because you won't be getting charged from the rear, because the rear is inside the square, cavalry will not charge at you. You know. So that was the way that the square would counter cavalry. Now I'll get on to the disadvantages of a square. there were two disadvantages of a square. Infantry, enemy infantry that is, and enemy artillery. Now, I'll do the infantry first, because it's longer. The infantry, now if you have a square, then let's take the 400 men, even. You have 100 men per side, don't you? Wait, no, 50 men because it's too deep. Yes, you have 50 men per side. 100 men, but in two ranks. So 100 men then, sorry. 100 men per side in two ranks. Now, if you're attacking from if you're attacking with your 400 infantry against my 400, and yours are in a line and mine are in a square, then you have an advantage, because I can only get 100 of my men to fire at yours, but you can have all 400 of your men firing at my square, which means that you you have me outnumbered 4-1 in terms of firepower. And you're thinking, oh well then why didn't the men on the two sides of the square fire? Well, partly because the far ends from your infantry can't actually reach the far ends of my square from your infantry can't actually reach your infantry, and that would leave them vulnerable to a cavalry charge, because as they're reloading, they're not able to keep the bayonets up to stop the cavalry from attacking, so that's why infantry were a disadvantage of a square. Now, the other one was artillery. Now, artillery, you know what a cannon is, don't you? If you don't, then I'm sorry, this just isn't the channel for you. You know what a cannon is. It fires a big ball of lead at a target. It's not very accurate, but generally if the target is densely packed, it helps. And do you know what is very densely packed? A square. Because if the cannonball lands in the middle, then you've not done really much. If it hits one of the sides, it will most likely continue and hit the other side, so there will have been, say, 8 men rather than 4 men taken out, as it would have been in a line. And if you're very luckily positioned with your cannon, and you're firing down the length of one of the sides, then you can get, say, and you're lucky with your shot, you can get, say, 10 to 20 men before the cannonball goes into the ground. And replicate this with large batteries concentrating their fire on one unit of infantry, you can see how this would be a problem. Now, this was demonstrated at the Battle of Waterloo, for instance, where Wellington's squares suffered horrendous casualties trying to hold off Marshal Ney's cavalry. I'll be speaking more about the Battle of Waterloo in another video, but for the sake of this video, the artillery of Napoleon gave Wellington's squares a good pounding. That's it about the squares today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found it informative, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button and press the bell. What's the harm that it could do, eh? Also, there is a Reddit page, r/Engelbert everything, no underscore in between. Just look that up and I'm sure you'll find it. Good day.